Welcome everybody to another episode of Positively Trek with your two intrepid trekkers with you on this journey. That's myself, Dan Gunther, and of course, my co-host, Barry DeFord. Barry, how's it going?
I am impressed with your ability to just suddenly rattle off intrepid trekkers. That's I would have tripped and fallen right on my face if I had tried that one. That's really well done.
I stuck the landing, but I think it was a close one.
Yeah, no, it would be a Kobayashi Maru for me.
Awesome. Well, we're here to talk about, of course, another episode and a fun topic this week because, as timing would have it, in the last week, we have learned that Star Trek Starfleet Academy has wrapped filming on their first season. So, principal photography or filming or however you want to put that has been completed for season 1. And now, of course, because it's a science fiction show, begins the long, arduous post-production period before we get this show on our television screens, which we're told will likely be 2026 before we actually see it. So still lots of work to be done, but the cast and all of those people involved in the in front of the camera stuff have finished up. So I figured this would be a good time to sit down and really hash out what we know about Starfleet Academy and kind of what our thoughts are going into this new show.
Yeah, it's a big event, and I think it's become kind of a big event because we have seen a lot of Star Trek's recent early arrived series disappearing on us. You know, it is sort of, I guess, a bit more of a sparse time for us in the world of Star Trek, and I think that's kind of going to be the way things go. But I have some thoughts, Stan, that I want to maybe share as we maybe discuss some of the principal elements that have come to pass, you know, with our, you know, the most recent news that filming has ended and stuff. And, you know, kind of marry that together with the themes that I wonder they might be treading as we move forward.
Well, I'm excited to learn your thoughts on the show for sure, because there is actually, believe it or not, a lot to talk about with Starfleet Academy. We haven't seen a single frame of footage. We haven't seen anything of the sets or anything like that. But the more we learn about this show, the more excited I get. So to start out with, I guess they've just wrapped on 6 months of filming. And that was all shot in Toronto on the what was newly christened as the Star Trek stage as Discovery wrapped. Starfleet Academy moved in and started filming then. And pretty exciting. I love that they actually have a Star Trek stage with a big sign saying that on the outside of the building in Toronto. I feel like a Positively Trek field trip might be in order someday.
Exactly. You can donate to our Patreon.
Yes. It is often much more expensive to vacation within Canada than it is to other countries. So.
That is a true fact. We could probably get elsewhere for much cheaper. That is for darn sure, and get a full buffet of food ready at all times. So that is. The first time actually I ever encountered Toronto, I was driving a cube van full of snowboards on one of the 401 or 2. I can't remember which 4 I was on, but it was a big, big highway, and I had a cube van. So things were a little bit stressful.
I'm sad to say I've only ever changed planes in Toronto, so that's the biggest Toronto experience I've had. For Starfleet Academy, we're going to go through, like I said, kind of all the things we know about it. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is probably the thing I'm most excited about for this show, and that is the cast that has been announced. So back when they first announced the premise of Starfleet Academy, or at least the fact that they were doing a Starfleet Academy show, I was kind of like, okay, I don't know. Cool, I guess. Not on the top of my list really for Star Trek shows, but as they keep kind of trotting out name after name of actors and characters we're going to see in this show, I get more and more excited. So probably, of course, the big first announcement was Holly Hunter, Academy Award winning actor Holly Hunter, as the captain and chancellor of Starfleet Academy. So I think this is a big get for Star Trek. The number of Academy Award-winning actors who have been in Trek, you could count, I think it's on two hands. I think there's 8 or 9 at this point. And that's even counting like after the fact Academy Award-winning actors on Star Trek. So that was revealed back in May of 2024.
Technically, we're 2 for 2 now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, that is counting Michelle Yeoh for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was cast as the Chancellor of Starfleet Academy. And apparently, I didn't know this until I was researching for this episode, the character of the Chancellor of the Academy was actually written with Holly Hunter in mind. And it was never expected that she would say yes to the role. But apparently, the writers were very surprised when she, quote, signed on right away. So
that's good sign.
Pretty cool.
I'm excited about that. I always love the fact that you get actors who are like, we're interested in having something Star Trek, and there's like, yes, like this is always a really good sign that, means she's going to really put everything she's got into it. I think that makes her very directable, and, maybe even kind of get her into some creative control if the character was literally designed for her. I mean, that could really help her invest. I'm excited for that prospect. I think she's in good hands too with the writers, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And Holly Hunter, I find her very compelling as an actor. And the fact that, like, even if they didn't get Holly Hunter, that this character was written as a Holly Hunter type, that gets me excited in and of itself. So I'm curious what they have in mind here. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be I think a good lead to the flagship television show, really, I think, is ultimately what the plan for this entire series is going to be. And I have a question I want to pose to you. Now, I know we have some recurring characters, right? But I would say from just a quick glance here, the oldest character really is the Doctor. Like, the only holdover from like the TNG era is the Doctor. Everyone else is from Discovery. So something kind of makes me feel like this might be, and the reason why they're getting rid of the other Star Trek episode or Star Trek series of recent is that this is the softest reboot we have ever seen. That literally they are now an entire century ahead after the burn.
Millennia. Oh,
yeah. Sorry, millennia.
Sorry. Yeah.
After the burn. So we're thinking here that, like, yeah, obviously we've already traveled a millennia into the future. You're right, and now we're 100 years past that with the burn happening. This really makes me think like, oh, they can just do whatever they want now. They don't have to be so adherent to all of these rules of canon. And if there's ever an issue, the Doctor can make sure that information is brought forward if it's necessary, right? Or something. He can still be that, like, little straw that takes us into the other times from the past, just to make sure, right? But yeah, part of me just makes me feel like, it'd be interesting had they have done this with Discovery off the bat instead of try to make it in the time it was. And I feel like maybe to some degree the reception of Discovery, somewhere in the writing room at some point, even back then, they basically said, I wonder if we should just move this as like a millennium into the future and then no one can touch us.
That is certainly like, and we'll get to the writing aspect of the show. That is one of the things that is brought up by the writers as certainly something that motivates the show. But you've jumped ahead on me for sure as well with Robert Picardo as the Doctor is another main character for sure. So I think that was probably the biggest surprise announcement for sure, was that the EMH from Voyager, Robert Picardo, would be in the show. Playing ostensibly that character. Now, I've seen some speculation online because if you look at the time periods, there's an episode of Voyager where there's a backup of the EMH who survives into this era, and at this point is or has made his way back to the Alpha Quadrant, in the footsteps of his former crew, 900 years earlier kind of thing. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that might be a bit of a deep cut for this character. I don't think that's where they're going. I think this is probably Voyager's EMH as we've seen and known him throughout Star Trek Voyager and now Star Trek Prodigy. I don't think it's that backup EMH module, but I would be thrilled to be proven wrong on that. That would be a pretty cool deep cut. But I liked your point about him bringing back the past stuff and being that touchstone for some of that previous Trek stuff as and when it's needed kind of thing. That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
He's a main cast member too, apparently, along with Holly Hunter, which is pretty cool. We also have Tig Notaro crossing over from Star Trek Discovery as a main cast member as well, playing Jet Reno, reprising that role from Star Trek Discovery. Thrilling to me. I love Tig Notaro. I think she's one of the coolest people on the planet. The fact that she was in Star Trek at all to begin with already thrilled me, but we're going to get more of her. So I'm over the moon about that.
Can't complain. I agree with you very much. Tig Notaro is a very funny comedian. Definitely is comfortable in the skin of her character, Jet Reno. I sometimes, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I just feel like this is just if Tig Notaro was a Starfleet engineer. Like, to be honest, there's, maybe a little less, I don't know. I don't know her personally, so I can't definitely speak to her crassness or anything like that. But no, there's a lot of lovableness to Jet Reno and whatnot. A bit of a Pulaski of the engineering room, I say to some degree,
Yeah.
So
and I will say, like, the most that I know from Tig Notaro is I listened to her podcast that she does with Mae Martin and Fortune Feimster. It's called Handsome. And going by that podcast, she's just playing herself, and it's delightful.
Excellent. No, that's very good.
So for the rest of the main cast, we don't have any character names, but we have a number of young actors, as you would expect, this being a show about cadets. So a lot of people that I don't know a ton about. So we have Carice Brooks, Bella Shepherd, George Hawkins, Karine Diane, Zoe Steiner, and Sandro Rosta. And apologies for any of those that I might have mispronounced. I'm excited for this group of young people just for the fact that we get to see them, pretty close anyway to the beginning of their careers. And what a cool thing to have for the rest of their career. They were a cadet on Starfleet Academy. That's pretty cool. I envy them. And I remember when a lot of the casting was announced, they had some videos of the Zoom calls to some of the actors telling them that they got the part. And if you haven't seen those, look them up on YouTube. They are some of the most delightful human interactions I've seen ever. Like the thrill of a young person being told that they got a part on a Star Trek show. Man, I can only imagine what that feels like, because they were delighted.
It's a great franchise to be a part of, and it comes with a pantheon of formidable actors who, in some cases, made their entire careers within Star Trek. And not to say that they weren't good in other things, right? But yeah, this is a wonderful, wonderful TV show with a fair bit of prestige to have on the resume, for sure. But I think the other piece of this is having such young, kind of unknown-y actors. They can really kind of put their all into this and not have to worry about being a different character. They can be unique. They can do a lot of stuff. And I think, again, this post-burn society is going to have to do a lot of rediscovery too. So maybe you'll kind of get more of that pushback to the sense of wonder that Star Trek is so good with doing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Seeing the Star Trek universe through the eyes of a young person, I think, is something that's really compelling. And certainly that was what was very compelling to me about Star Trek Prodigy, for example. So, and we'll talk a little bit later. I have some thoughts about, what their target audience is and how it might be received by people who aren't necessarily in their target audience. But to kind of preview my thoughts on that, Star Trek Prodigy was the kids show, and I loved that show. So
yeah, and big props to the Voyager era hologram mentor. I can only assume that's what Bob Picardo is going to be doing, So yeah. I do kind of, part of me did think about that, was like, is this just going to be adult Prodigy? Like, why is this why they got rid of Prodigy? Is they're like, that's a great idea. We need to make that for everybody, not just on Nickelodeon. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of shared DNA, and I mean, again, not having seen a single second of footage or anything, just on paper, there's some conceptual stuff that I think crosses over a lot there.
Fertile soil for some interesting connections.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's all we know about the main cast, but we do have a few recurring characters. So first of all, another huge surprise to me that I was just blown away by, Paul Giamatti, one of my favorite actors, not always in the best films, but almost certainly always the best part of many films. Paul Giamatti, I love the guy. He plays what has been described as the villain of season 1. And the description we got was someone with a dark past who is connected to one of the cadets. Paul Giamatti in Star Trek. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm here for it. That seems interesting. I mean, I guess that's the thing is like he's a person whose name kind of floats in the air a little bit, right? In terms of like actors in strong roles and stuff like that. You know, he's definitely made a name for himself. So I would expect Paul Giamatti to not phone in this. I think he's gonna show us some good acting chops. I think he can do a lot with whatever he's given. So I'm excited to see just more or less like I want to see a fully fleshed out character, and Giamatti's, got enough acting chops that he could even have a part in characterizing whatever that person's going to be and how they're going to be. So I'm hoping with principal filming done and stuff like that, that he's had the chance to do that. Much like Holly Hunter. Like, I think it's kind of cool to have, I guess, ostensibly are those two going to be squaring off? That's going to be an interesting thing, or she's going to be helping mentor or be a part of what's happening between these two. Maybe there's something deeper, right? Getting those two in a room together, I think, wouldn't hurt. To have them choose some scenery.
And similar to Holly Hunter's casting as well. Basically, this all came about because Paul Giamatti had talked about how much he loves Star Trek and he really wanted to play a Klingon, was kind of the running thing. This was during his promotion for his 2023 film, The Holdovers.
Yeah.
And so Kurtzman approached him and said, we'd love to have you on the show. Here's kind of a roster of guest roles that we have in Starfleet Academy. What would you be interested in? And apparently Giamatti surprised Kurtzman and everybody by choosing to play the main villain, who has this sizable role throughout the season, rather than, just a one-off character or kind of a walk-on cameo type thing that they were kind of maybe expecting, because, he's a very important person with many things to do, right? But he hits the pause button for Star Trek to play this villain for the season of Starfleet Academy. That's pretty cool.
It's an exciting prospect, and much like Holly Hunter, they've got some people who want to be on the set, so bring them down.
Yeah, definitely. So 2 other recurring actors on the show. We have Gina Yasher as a Starfleet Academy instructor. I don't know a lot about her, nothing about the role other than that. And then even less known about the role, which is absolutely nothing. Another surprise announcement fairly recently was that Tatiana Maslany is going to be in a recurring guest role in season 1. No word whatsoever what her role is. Is she a good guy, bad guy? What's going on there? Nothing. But another person who I am thrilled to have in Star Trek. I'm unashamedly say I absolutely loved her in She-Hulk. I thought she was incredible. And it's on my list to watch. I haven't watched it yet, but I've been told that she is a phenomenon in Orphan Black, which I haven't seen.
Yeah, honestly, I am not familiar with either shows that she's been on before, or anything that she's been a part of. So this will be kind of like my first look at this character, at this actor, what she can do. So I'm excited. She comes well recommended. And
then we have 3 guest characters or guest actors throughout the season 1, I guess. Becky Lynch is a member of a Starfleet bridge crew. And then 2 returns from Star Trek Discovery. Mary Wiseman, of course, as Sylvia Tilly, Starfleet Academy instructor extraordinaire.
Excited for this. Her circuit excited. Gets closed.
I love Mary Wiseman. I love Tilly. I was always really disappointed when, her role kind of diminished a bit in season 4 and 5. Yeah. Very, very excited to have her back on Starfleet Academy. And then, of course, Oded Fair as the Dadmiral, I guess he's known as sometimes. Admiral Charles Vance, Commander-in-Chief of Starfleet, is going to be in Starfleet Academy as well. So
yeah, it's good to see him with that continuity again, kind of the most recent continuity, and then Mary Wiseman as well. Yeah, I think just for guest characters as well, I don't know what that means. Like, is it 1 episode? Is it 5? We'll see, I guess. But I just hope that Michelle Yeoh was a guest at the start.
So that's the cast. Those are the faces we're going to be seeing in Starfleet Academy. I don't know. Overall thoughts on this group of people? What do you think? For what little we know about some of them, I guess.
I think there's enough talent either from within the Star Trek world already, right? Tig Notaro, Mary Wiseman, Oded Fair, and then you've got acting powerhouses like Holly Hunter and Paul Giamatti. Formula-wise, I feel like this is good. I think it depends on what the actors are given, and it depends on how much of what they do we're given. You and I did say a lot about how the recent work with Michelle Yeoh was in fact it was cut, right? There was more to it originally, and parts of it were cut and stuff. And I mean, I don't know if that definitely moved into filming or what, but I do think that we could have a nice slow-moving story, with some episodic elements. I think I remember them saying that it was going to be a bit of a mix of episodes and arcs kind of thing. Take your time. You are starting from a rebooted position, and I would say you have a very strong cast in front of you. So I feel like all of the pieces are there to make something that could have some staying power, and even if it's fewer episodes, it could really drive the franchise into uncharted territory of streaming services and all that sort of stuff, right? Like we've kind of had some ups and downs, and I feel like this is less of a Hail Mary throw in my mind, given the acting talent that they've got coming in. So yeah, I'm hopeful.
Well, that transitions us nicely into talking about the writing behind the show, because the actors are only going to be as good as what they're given. So this is what we know so far about the writing staff and the people behind Starfleet Academy. The showrunners are, of course, Alex Kurtzman and Noga Landau. They're the heads of the writers' room here. As far as other writers go, we know that Tawny Newsome is one of the writers, and she'll be in the writers' room, moving over from her role in Star Trek Lower Decks as Mariner, of course. And at the same time, working on pitching her own Star Trek comedy series that she's apparently working on as well, which I guess may be a subject for another episode at some point, but much less known about that one, I have to say.
Yeah.
And then Gaia Violo is another writer on staff and the writer of the premiere episode, apparently. So that's all we know about the writing staff. I'm assuming there's more that we just haven't heard from yet, but it is a functioning writer's room, and they're hard at work working on season 2, which they've already been greenlit from the powers that be as well. So
yeah, I mean, obviously for me, seeing Tawny Newsome in this capacity really fills me with confidence. I really like her portrayal of Mariner, the involvement she had sort of in the development of that character, and therefore the story itself. She definitely brings an energy to Star Trek that I personally really, really like. Again, there's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek aspect to the way she approaches some stuff, but then also she can really hit you from time to time. And obviously watch Lower Decks and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's smart writing. And so I'm hopeful that she can kind of carry that over. That little bit of self-awareness would be great. Something that I think at first Star Trek Discovery didn't have, and it developed it more, and that made it better as it went. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't know, again, as much about Gaia Violo, but I would say, again, them dropping Tawny Newsome is definitely a tactical choice on their end. They want to inspire confidence in us, and because of that, yes, you have mine.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. There were some comments, too, from the people who've been working on it as well. One of the big questions, of course, and we'll talk about the setting of it in a bit, but one of the big questions was, why set it in the 32nd century in the Discovery era? What's the reasoning for that? And there are a few reasons that have been outlined, but one of my favorites was Alex Kurtzman kind of talking about what the current generation is going through and the challenges that the current generation is facing, which have only grown exponentially since he made these comments even. So he was talking about how the characters are inheriting these massive challenges, like coming out of the burn and rebuilding the Federation and that sort of thing. And how that really relates to, like I said, what the generation coming up now is facing with climate change and geopolitical situations and that sort of thing. So I think there's a real potential there for it to really speak to the moment, which really good Star Trek always does, right? I mean, the original series came about during huge political upheaval in the 60s and voiced perfectly by Terry Garr's character in Assignment Earth, where young people aren't sure they're going to be here tomorrow and all of this stuff, right? And I think we're seeing a lot of similar things happening right now with uncertainty about the planet's future, the climate, and now, of course, as has been the case for a while, geopolitically and stuff as well. So yeah, I feel like it could have a lot of really important things to say to people living now.
I agree. I think also it kind of maybe sort of embodies a sort of post-apocalyptic Star Trek to some degree. I mean, apocalypse in this case, not as our popular culture idea of the end of the world, but the Greek great change definition of apocalypse, right? That they are in the other side of a great change. And I would say that obviously the COVID pandemic, the gigantic economic crash of 2008, successive forever wars, the kind of loss in that hopefulness that came from the original series, right? The 60s, though it was during the Cold War, there was also a hope that, by the 90s or so, we should probably have this figured out, right? Is kind of the impression I got for a lot of that. And, and I think the 90s did sort of give us sort of a sense of achievement in the sense that, like, the Soviet Union had been quote unquote vanquished and the NATO allies with America kind of at the helm was sort of the top dog. And we're beyond that now where we do sort of see the darker elements of the hegemony of the United States in the world. We see kind of new conflicts arising rather than them kind of coming to an end. That though the Soviet Union is gone, now there's this sort of existential threat of countries like China and stuff, and the media's portrayal of things. I would be interested to see what message folks like Tawny Newsome and the lot are going to try to give us here, right? I come from obviously a pretty political and politicized background, as we all know. So I am interested to see what she wants to cover, right? What kind of ripped from the headlines sort of stuff is she going to, and other writers going to approach with this through these characters, through their experiences and the story itself.
Absolutely, and I echo. I'm curious too. It's like we have an opportunity here, I think, to really make Star Trek what it was in the 60s. And I mean, I love 90s Trek. That's the era that like I grew up in, and I really enjoy Berman era Star Trek, TNG, Deep Space Nine, especially Voyager, Enterprise. But yeah, it came at a time where, at least from the West's perspective, it felt like, smooth sailing now, like, oh, everything's hunky dory now. And so Star Trek kind of became something else. Like the original series really was that kind of beacon that we could be like, okay, let's do that. That looks great. This is terrible. Let's do that. And I feel like Star Trek now, as sad as I don't want to say like, oh, what a great opportunity, but it does have the opportunity now, I think, to be that again. And maybe I'm just a starry-eyed idealist that, I don't know, but Star Trek at its best, I think, can change the world, or at least change the lives of the people who watch it. So let's aim for that. I like that.
I agree. It is a strong pedigree, and you're right. It has the opportunity to, like, never forget that Martin Luther King Jr. watched Star Trek. He did, because he's the one who convinces Nichelle Nichols to stay on the show. That's huge. Martin Luther King was a very important human being, and I'm not trying to just like wave him like a flag, because he's more than that, right? It's the movement that literally she's connected to through Star Trek, right? In fact, there are a lot of strong women around that, right? So we come from a strong pedigree. Desilu Studios, right? The new Star Trek studios, like, these are two named things now. Well, let's do something with that. I guess let's not be nuanced about it. Let's just be loud and proud about the fact that Star Trek has done some really great political stuff in the past, and that it has challenged people unapologetically, and go for it, right? Like, let's rattle some cages. Who cares? What are we going to do? Cancel us?
I still remember letter writing campaigns. We could do that again.
Yeah.
Positively Trek comes to you each week thanks to the efforts of our amazing Patreon members. If you'd like to help support the show, simply visit patreon.com/positivelytrek. Join at any level to get early access to ad-free episodes and exclusive content. For higher tiers, we offer shoutouts, associate producer credits, and more. We appreciate each and every one of our listeners. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Live long and prosper. Well, in addition to, of course, it serving as a metaphor for real-world challenges, as you alluded to earlier, the 32nd century, of course, gives the writers some freedom to kind of set their own path. You know, they're not beholden to a lot of the old stuff that I still love and think is very important, and all of that stuff. It all still exists, but we are in a new and different era now, very far removed from that. So yeah, you can introduce new people to the franchise with new ideas, not kind of like, oh, we can't do that story because of X, Y, and Z. Well, no, actually, we can. We're far enough removed. We can do something a little different, right? So yeah, another good reason for the 32nd century setting for sure.
Absolutely. It'd be like setting a show in the Wild West and people being like, yes, but in Rome, they did this. And it's like, yeah, that was 1,000 years ago. Anyway, like
exactly.
And I don't mind that, right? I guess, like, to some degree, the era from which we were trying to preserve, I guess, maybe this is a political conversation about revising constitutions, right? But they wrote it in 1776, or in our case, 1982. The idea of trying to keep something that's really from another era that's gone really doesn't feel good. Like, we can reinvent Star Trek. We've done it a few times in the past. Let's just do it again. And again, if you get a bunch of fans who shout this isn't Star Trek, okay, you can watch the old stuff. That's fine. Go ahead, do it.
My Blu-rays, I'm looking at the shelf now. Yeah, they're still there. They didn't disappear. They didn't
there they are.
Poof in a flash of continuity errors or something. I don't know.
It's not like George Lucas when he's going to try to break into your house and steal the old original version of Star Wars. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, to kind of couch some of those sentiments in a little bit of, a little bit of bubble wrap to protect us sensitive Trekkies that we are sometimes, there was an interview where Tawny Newsome was talking about the writer's room, saying that, there are all these things here to kind of bring Star Trek into a new era and attract a younger generation, new viewers, but did add that there are writers on staff who are, quote, real canon hound dogs.
Yeah.
And wanted to ensure that the series remained true to the franchise for, those longtime fans like us, like a lot of people listening. that will appreciate that sort of thing. So, they're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater or anything like that. Don't worry. They're still Star Trek, and they're still, really careful about that stuff. I think it'll be interesting to see the kind of balance they strike with that, for sure.
Yeah. I guess, it's about keeping the foundational elements of Star Trek, and that is sometimes rattling cages about very, very important political issues, right? So do that. You can add and subtract however many nacelles you want. You can wipe out most of the Federation in a weird explosion from a crying person. You can do all of that. Like, I don't know. Like, he was very sad. Anyways,
there was dilithium involved. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, right. Whatever. Do what you need. But in this case, you've kind of shaken the Etch-a-Sketch, so draw something nice, right? Is what I'm basically saying. And that is the idea that I am willing to let go of certain canonical elements, right? As long as they don't start wholeheartedly stealing from other series, unless they get another great idea from Babylon 5. I think there's ways in which we can approach this with a bit more of an open mind. And to the people who are going to get upset, I guess to some degree, some people have, complained more about the writing itself, right? Or its production or something. I think, in retrospect, going back to it, I think my biggest Section 31 critique would be it gets a little busy visually sometimes, right? But again, throwing more shade at Star Wars, so did Episode 3. I'm sorry, that initial fight was just blah, 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 blah. And the last lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan and Darth or Anakin or whatever, there's just blue in front of the screen. Like, you don't really even see what's happening. And maybe I'm an old curmudgeon, but I guess that's it, is take your time and enjoy it. This is a whole new start. You don't have to rush this one. Just take it slow.
Absolutely.
I like my Trek slow.
Yeah. I am curious what the visual style will look like and like what that language of filmmaking will be. I've said on the past that like sometimes the little directorial flourishes are a bit much, like spinning the camera for no reason. And, I don't know. The fact that a lot of this takes place in the San Francisco campus on Earth maybe makes me feel like some parts of it might be a little more grounded. Literally and figuratively, I guess.
I was just going to say, ooh, cunning pun, sir, cunning pun.
But I mean, I feel like there's some truth in that though, too. I feel like if we're not, I'm assuming we're going to be on starships on the regular and all that sort of stuff. But, I like the idea of them having a home base that they kind of come back to that can make it feel like a home or like, I don't know. I feel like
Deep Space Nine.
Exactly. And might translate into like a kind of more, I'm trying to think of another word than grounded, but that's exactly what I mean. Like just
down to earth.
Down to earth. Even worse, but I love it.
Dig up, DeFord, dig up.
A little grounded, a little down to earth, a little hugging the ground, if you know what I mean. I don't know.
Tethered well by gravity.
Yes. So I guess with that said, we should talk a little bit about the setting. As we've mentioned, it's already, it's set in 32nd century following the events of Star Trek Discovery. There is a component or a large part of it set on Earth on the San Francisco Starfleet Academy campus, which has been reopened now that Earth has rejoined the Federation, which is a cool sentence to say at this point. It's kind of fun. Now, apparently there's this atrium set that has been built, which is said to be the largest set ever built for a Star Trek series, which is saying something given how big the Promenade set for Deep Space Nine was, which at the time was the largest standing set in Hollywood, I think it was said. So this new atrium set fills the biggest soundstage in Canada. It consists of 2 stories featuring a mess hall, an amphitheater, multiple classrooms, catwalks, trees, and of course, because it's Star Trek and we're in San Francisco, it has a view of the Golden Gate Bridge, because you can't go anywhere in that city without seeing that damn bridge out a window for some reason in Star Trek.
Yeah, you are right. They really ham that up. It's basically like a San Francisco calendar. in the background. But hey, you know what? Why not? Like, I think about how many times I've seen that bridge. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge is truly like the symbol of humanity in a lot of ways. And I'm like, I can think of a few different ones, but hey, you know what? It's all good. The Golden Gate Bridge. I actually have an interesting fun fact, and it might be debunkable, but apparently I heard this at some point in my life. I don't even remember where I heard this, but apparently the mathematics that made the Golden Gate Bridge, if you kept its schematics going all the way to Mars, the two sides of the Golden Gate Bridge would actually intersect, because it's not perfect math necessary for that type of distance. It can go across the bay, but it can't go from Earth to Mars. The math would actually cause the two sides of the bridge to intersect with each other.
Interesting.
So get out your Googles, everyone. Maybe I got that wrong.
Get out your Googles and your protractors. I want to see this.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Let's see what we can figure out.
That's awesome. You know, it's funny, speaking of the Golden Gate Bridge and its relationship to Star Trek, we rewatched Past Tense Part 1 and 2 a while back for this podcast, and it's one of the only times they're in San Francisco that you don't see the Golden Gate Bridge.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
But there's a line where after they beam down and they get taken into custody, Bashir and Sisko, they're walking and they say, you know, where are we? What's going on? And one of them, Sisko or Bashir, says, I caught a glimpse of the Golden Gate Bridge a while back, so we are in San Francisco. And I'm like, of course you did. Of course you did.
All you have to do is look up. There it is.
I love it.
Oh, Lordy. And not a hill to speak of either. They didn't run up and down hill in that one. Everything was flat.
San Francisco famously very flat. No hills whatsoever.
Yeah, nothing. Interesting. Oh, I didn't even think about that. They didn't see the gold. Like, there wasn't a picture or any kind of representation of it, but they were in San Francisco. Huh.
Yeah.
Goodness.
That's pretty funny.
Part of me again, you know, they are trying to pull some Deep Space Nine stuff here, I think by setting it
like it
in this one specific place. And I think this could also, and just call me crazy, but I think this means that they have enough of a stationary place that maybe we're going to deal with a couple love stories. There's some kids involved here.
Yes.
Yeah. Back to the backdrop of the Golden Gate Bridge. I can see something happening.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. 100%. I wonder if there's a Cardassian tailor somewhere in the atrium.
Yeah. And Morn.
And Morn. Absolutely.
Morn's got to be there somewhere.
Got to have Morn.
He never shuts up.
Never shuts up. Well, last little tidbits, I guess. The last little dredges of information that we have about the series. It will be 10 episodes, as most Star Trek series have been in this modern era for this first season. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, it's expected to release in 2026. Places I've seen do make allowances that it might release in 2025. Maybe, but the expectation right now is still 2026, apparently. And the composer for the series is Jeff Russo, who, of course, was the composer on Star Trek Discovery, and most recently did the music for Section 31 as well. So looking forward to an interesting Jeff Russo theme for this show, I think.
Yeah, that's where I'm interested, is how's he gonna, are we just gonna come up with a new, no need for the dun, 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 you know, like what are we gonna do here? So I'm interested. I think the 10 episodes is annoying. I'm just gonna complain a little bit. I do more episodes, please. Just 20. Give me 20.
Yeah.
Right. But whatever. I'll take 10. That's fine. So they better be darn good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
And they will be. They'll be all right. I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Yeah, me too. So I guess let's wrap up then, I guess, with our kind of final thoughts about this whole endeavor. I'll kick things off a little bit by saying kind of what I said at the beginning, which was when they first announced this concept, I was kind of about it, which, to be fair, I have been for a lot of the concepts they've mentioned, like a half-hour animated Star Trek comedy. Oh, okay, that's kind of weird. A kid's show. Oh, okay. Both of those blew my expectations out of the water, and I got really excited about them. Star Trek Lower Decks has become one of my most beloved things in Star Trek, along with Star Trek Prodigy. So this show, I'm anticipating kind of the same, I guess. You know, maybe a concept that's been around for many, many years. I think even post original series, Gene Roddenberry very briefly tossed around the idea of like, oh, young Kirk and Spock at the Academy. We could do something like that. I think it was either Harve Bennett or Nicholas Meyer who, after Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, were saying like, oh, we should do a Starfleet Academy type thing. This is an idea that has been around for almost as long as Star Trek has been around. So they're finally giving it a shot. I'm kind of, okay, let's see how you do then. So I'm cautiously optimistic. That's my starting point for the whole endeavor. Now you add all these names and Tawny Newsome in the writer's room and all of the things we've learned, and that shoots up to, I'm pretty darn excited about this. It feels like they're giving it legs. They're putting resources into it that I think Star Trek needs. I think you need to have faith in a Star Trek and put the resources behind it to make it succeed. You can't just, pardon my colloquialism, you can't just half-ass it and hope people like it. I feel like they're not doing that. I feel like they're putting some weight behind this, and that makes me excited.
Yeah, I mean, echoing what you say, I guess I have to say that, like, I think the place in which Star Trek is one that actually kind of reminds me of before the premiere of Discovery. But I think when Discovery was coming in, I think the stakes were really, really, really high. And I feel like the backlash from that caused it to kind of shudder out a little. My anticipation is that the people who don't like what Star Trek does now won't like what Star Trek does. And the people who are still entertained by it will remain entertained by it. I think we know what we're getting with everybody involved here. I think ultimately we know what to expect. So meet those expectations and we're going to be happy. And I think this does show a lot of opportunity for Star Trek moving forward. And I'm excited for the opportunity to go into this kind of new thing that they've hinted at, right? The end of Picard with 7 of 9, leading a crew. I was like, okay, maybe, going in the direction of an animated feature that I was kind of like, all right, let's see what happens. Prodigy, same idea, right? And I do have to say, Discovery really started hitting its stride in its own way, in its new location in time, right? Mm-hmm. So this, I think, is maybe the lesson made into a singular show. I don't like the cost. I would have preferred to have seen Lower Decks stay. I would have preferred to see more Prodigy. I actually wouldn't have minded another season of Discovery, to be honest. That would have been interesting to me. So in that respect, the cost is a little bit like, all right, if you've done this, then all right, I'm expecting this to be good. And I don't know, I'm confident. I'm confident in those expectations.
Interesting. So I've got a question for you then. Do you think that Starfleet Academy might garner a measure of backlash from certain fans who maybe are hurt that Lower Decks was canceled, that Prodigy was let go, that will some people maybe see this as the reason those shows are ending, or maybe also the reason they're not getting a Star Trek Legacy show, if that's kind of where they'd planted their flag?
Yeah, I guess to some degree, I would say yes, there might be some people who will not be happy about the cost, but I'm one of those people. And I guess for me, and maybe it's the show we're on, maybe it's the attitude I have towards Star Trek, I will remain positive about it. I'm not going to cry over something I can't control. I'm not in the writer's room. I'm not an executive. I don't have that power. I don't have that money. So I'm going to be happy with what I get, ultimately. I think the people who are going to be the biggest backlashers are the same people who went nuts when Discovery came. Yeah. Right? They're still out there. They're still really upset and don't have any other hobbies. So we'll probably see them talk. But for me, I think it's more about the actual people who enjoy Star Trek, who are enjoying Star Trek, warts and all, I guess you could say, and we can kind of go from there. So out of percentage wise, I guess I would say I'm at about a 80% confident that we're going to see something really, really good. 10% maybe some missteps and some false starts, and then another 10% of like, maybe this needs some more time to bake, right? Is kind of where I'm at.
Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to bring up is something that I've been seeing from fans online or from folks online. The idea that maybe this isn't a Star Trek that is meant for me, or the target audience for this might skew a little younger than a typical Star Trek fan, or a lot of Star Trek fans out there. First of all, which I will say I think is a necessary thing if we want Star Trek to continue. We can't just enjoy it until we're 90 and then sod everyone else. But I don't know. So my answer to that would be something I alluded to earlier as well, which was that Star Trek Prodigy was the kids show, right? Like it was the one designed to bring in young fans. And I enjoyed the heck out of that show. I think the showrunners, Kevin and Dan Hageman, struck this amazing balance where, yeah, they were explaining Star Trek for the first time to a new audience and showing how cool this world is. And at the same time, really being true to its roots and giving us those continuity touchstones that we feel are so very important, and they've done pretty well so far. Your mileage may vary, everyone out there, how you feel they've done so far. I think, Star Trek Discovery went 5 seasons and managed, this will be the 3rd spinoff of Star Trek Discovery, if you count Section 31 there as well, right? So I don't know, they're doing pretty good, I think. I think it's time for me to anyway give them the benefit of the doubt. Missteps, sure, of course there will be, but I'm looking forward to this, and I will have planted in my mind the idea that, of course, not everything in this universe is written for me, and I'm not going to begrudge them trying to bring in other audience members or trying to play to parts of the audience that aren't my exact demographic. So I don't know. That's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like you saying it goes to a younger demographic. Like, is it going to be like in Outer Banks in space? No, I don't think so. It'll have lasers. But I do think that, we are gonna sort of see how you target a younger demographic, and you and I are, and we're not geezers, but we're on our way. We're heading there. Slow on the slow boat to seniors discount, and I'm excited for that. I want cheap pancakes, damn it.
I cannot wait for the early bird special.
Oh, right, exactly. I'm getting let on the bus first. Oh, it's gonna be wonderful. And to be able to, I already say this, but when I was your age, have you done a few of those yet in your day?
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I was wondering if we were going to get a bunch of like when I was your age or back in my day from the EMH doctor.
Right.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Back in my day.
I remember when.
I remember when you used to have to hold tricorders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hope he makes mention of like Neelix's food, or something.
Well, I guess that's probably a good place to leave it. I'd be curious what our listeners think about everything we've learned so far about Starfleet Academy, and watch, this episode will come out and we'll get like an info dump the next day or something.
That's what always happens.
A whole bunch of stuff. But as of right now, we're recording this on February 19th, 2025. This is what we know about Starfleet Academy. Oh, I learned one more thing just today. Sorry.
Ooh.
I was listening to Trek Culture's podcast.
Not quite breaking.
They're not a good podcast. They're not good. Listen to us instead. I'm just kidding. Sean Farrick and them, they do an amazing job. But anyway, they had Ben Robinson on from Master Replicas talking about their new line of Star Trek action figures. And of course, they get the license to do Starfleet Academy action figures as well. And he was asked, like, can you tell us anything? Is there? And he made mention of the aesthetic of the show being very varsity type thing. So lots of pennants, lots of like kind of American college feeling paraphernalia, which could be interesting. I don't know. And I think we see a bit of that in some of the pictures that were released by the cast members announcing the end of filming, with those kind of nifty jackets that I assume are going to show up on StarTrek.com in the next week or so.
Yeah, probably.
But it's just an interesting little tidbit there, I guess. So there's one more thing we learned.
Interesting. I don't have much to build on that. The varsity feel actually makes me be like, so Outer Banks in space.
Yeah, maybe.
I know nothing about Outer Banks, by the way. I just know that it's like Beverly Hills 90210, which dates me horribly.
Oof. Yeah. A lot of the comparisons I've been seeing, people are like, is this just going to be Riverdale, but in space? And even that's getting a little long in the tooth now, maybe. I don't know. World moves fast, man. I tell you. It
really does. We're just hurtling through space.
Yeah. I look forward to the day that somebody watches reruns of Riverdale and they're like, oh, so it's like that Star Trek Starfleet Academy show, but like in the past. Anyway, like I said, I'd love to hear from our audience. Let us know, positivelytrek@gmail.com. And of course, our Positively Trek discussion group on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you there. Until next time, I've been Dan Gunther. This has been Positively Trek. Thank you so much for podding with me today, Barry.
Oh, always a pleasure, my good man. Always a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, until next time, as always, stay positive. Positively Trek is produced and edited by me, Dan Gunther, and co-produced by Barry DeFord on Treaty 8 territory, the home of the Beaver, Cree, Dene, and Métis people, whose histories, languages, and cultures we respect. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations.